Well, welcome back. I'm working on my little raccoon here, and forgive me, I got started before I decided, I got started before I remembered I was going to do a video of this. So here we are. I have mixtures of, this is ivory black plus a little bit of burnt umber plus white, and so I'm doing his fur. It gets really dark right here where it goes around behind his body here. And then this is a mixture of my mud plus a little cadmium orange plus white, and it just makes a nice soft brown. Bring a little shadow under there. This is that same mixture with more white mixed into it. And I'm letting my brush pick up some of this other color because this is a dirty, this is more of a gray. He's not just real white here on his hind leg. And I love this bright brush. It's a square tip brush, and I can get that feel of the fur. You have to hold your brush very lightly, and this is a hard concept for people starting out painting to learn, and it's something that it took me years to develop, this technique. But you have to hold your brush just very lightly so you can get that nice texture. So we want that feel of his rough coat. And it comes down here, it gets lighter. Let me finish out this back leg here. This is a little bit of, right now I'm putting a little mixture of my mud plus liquid, just using that to darken this paint. I can pull that into my paint that I have there. Now I'm taking another bright brush, but this one's a little bit smaller, since I'm working in a little more confined area. And then you can see how I hold that brush sideways and I can get the feel of the hair. This is just, I've found this to be a very versatile brush, and brushes are individual. I mean, some people may like it, some people may not, but I prefer it. A little bit of that mud here just to make a shadow, and then his foot comes out. My ground there is still wet, and I want to make this a little bit darker underneath him. I still have my mixtures all saved from the ground, and so I can make this really dark back here. Now I'm taking now this brush is what they call a round, and it's a number 4, and it just comes to a really nice point. And I like this for detail. I can do his feet. I just basically put one big brush stroke of color there, and then I draw his little toes into that. Put a little bit of darkness under here. His little hand. Now I'm going to bring a little light just up on his knuckles. They catch the light. And he's going to have a little dark underneath. And then I'll bring some light. There's his leg. his fur of his haunch here comes, that joint comes forward. In a horse, you call that the stifle joint. I'm not sure what you call it in raccoons, but, and we want to just, sun's catching those toes there. So we got his foot in there. Again, I don't want it real detailed because I don't want your attention to just go down to his foot. His tail, I'm going to use some of my lighter color. I'm going to bring some gray into that. I do the lighter part of his tail first. So it comes around here to the ground. It's going to be bluer on the underneath side. I'm going to make a little shadow here under his tail. And now we're going to come back with that black plus a little bit of burnt umber plus a little bit of white. This isn't just solid black, it's more of a dark brown. And it even gets browner underneath. It's darker on, we're seeing more the underneath of his tail here. And then he just gets the you can just see I feather that color and I can pull it into my background. My background is still wet, so I can make this soft here because its tail's real furry. And then we'll just get a little light. And again, I can use the corner of that brush to make those furry strokes. Now let's make his front leg here, or his arm. I'm going to use some of the whiter color here. Now his elbow goes back here behind that pumpkin. I'm going to bring some blue here because he's more into the shadow under his head. His little chest back here is going to be darker. Got it a little too dark, so I just bring some lighter color back over that and then work that in. And this side is also going to be in shadow, his arm, shoulder. Now he's kind of been eating on that, so that shadow there highlights this part of the pumpkin that he's broken apart. I'll let that go bluer back there. That turns his body around. Blues go back, worms come forward, and so I want that to go back. Go this little bit here. I'm not seeing much of that little hand. Just portion of it to make this a little bit lighter so he stands out from the background. But you can see how that brush, just holding it flat like that and lightly working it on there, it gives the feeling of his fur. Now his fur here comes, got that a little too dark. It's like he's almost wearing a fur coat and then his little hands pop out. I'm just bracing my hand against the easel below the painting. And I can then put my wrist, this wrist here, I can just balance, and that steadies my hand. So I'm doing this little detail. He's got a thumb, goes back behind here. They have little hands almost like human hands. His thumb's going back behind the slice of pumpkin. And then his little fingers are holding it here. Again, I've saved some of my pumpkin color, and I want a little shadow in between. And he's going to have his little finger, it's kind of down here with his other. I may have to come back later and do a little more work on these fingers, but I just want to get him blocked in right now. And this is my pumpkin. And this little finger here, we're going to just catch a little light of it. Kind of goes back. I got it too far down. Shadow under here. It just kind of goes back under. You know, sometimes how your hands go, if it's from an angle, you don't see that other finger out. Now we want to put a little bit of light hitting on that hand. So I'm going to take some of my lighter color here, just hit on the back of his hand. Where his fingers go down, I don't want the light, just as on the back of his hand. And then on his arm here, this fur gets a little bit of a highlight coming around. And I make that pretty textured. You can see I've got a lot of paint on my brush. Have that thumb coming up too high there, so I can just take my dark color and want his thumb to go behind that. There we go. Now this other hand. He's in shadow back here, but that will be a little bit lighter than his arm. And I'm just going to bring some dark shadow around his fingers here. So I'm not going to put a whole lot of detail there, but it's just he's holding that. You can kind of see where he's holding that, and I'm making the ground darker. Bring a little more shadow on the ground back there. That also accentuates that piece of pumpkin that he's broken off of that whole pumpkin there. Now let's start on his head. Darker here. ears, he's got white on top of his ears. So I'm just going to paint the tips. I'm going to paint his whole ear white, then I'll come back with some dark and make the inner side of it. Gina loves raccoons. She, when she was a little kid, had a raccoon that she called Charlie. So this is her Charlie. See how I could just take that paintbrush with the darker paint in it, come back, and with one stroke shape his ear. Now he's got just some bright, good solid black right behind his hair here, behind his ear. And by painting wet into wet, I can just really get that nice furry feel. What I want to do his other ear. And I can just take my brush and with one or two strokes, just make that shape his ear. Now this is also a bright brush. It's just a smaller one. This is a number 6. It has that square tip, but it's smaller. Just allows me to get in there, but I could make that circular stroke just by going in there and twisting the brush. If you haven't tried these brushes, you just give one a try. You really might like them. Okay. Let's start on his lower face down here. It's too dark. And I drew my basic sketch in with a mixture of mud plus liquid. And that's dry now, so I get pretty detailed in my oil wash sketch, because that way then it makes it really easy when I come back to paint. I've got my drawing there. I don't have to worry about if I'm accurate or not. I already have my accurate drawing there. On this side of his face, it's white, but it's in shadow. And I'm going to come back and make this down here a little darker. Because I want his face to show better. And I'm going to come down and make this a little darker here just to accentuate the pumpkin slice. And then this side of his muzzle is pretty bright because the sun's catching it. The sun's coming in from the left. Now I want to paint. Let's get the brush that I want. I'm just getting a size. This is the brush I've been using. I want a size a little bit smaller, a little bit, not as wide. So I'm picking up this brush. This is a number, I don't know what number that is. I've used that brush so much it doesn't have a number on it, but I would imagine it's a number. That other was a 6. This is probably a 10. Now here I'm using ivory black because the mask on his face is black. And I just see how I can just make those edges soft into that white. He actually has some white that comes down here. just come down and that mask comes down over his nose. And actually on the top of his nose, the bridge of his nose, he gets browner, kind of a reddish brown. And then his nose, underneath is dark here, but the top of his nose where the light hits it is a little bit lighter. I've just mixed a little white into that ivory black. Probably too light, but I can come back with a little bit of my ivory black. And I leave the junction, the front of his nose, leave that lighter because there's a highlight with their wet noses. They get a little highlight here. Just like a dog. So there's his nose. Now his eyes, paint that all in there. Now his eyes are hard to see, but they're right up here. The light's coming in from the left, so there's going to be, the light's going to catch the iris of his eye right there. So this, I'm using a reddish brown that's mud plus alizarin, mud plus cadmium red light plus cadmium orange plus white. And this just makes where the light illuminates his iris just a little bit. They're not real apparent. In fact, I have this one. I need this one a little bit. Okay, and then he's going to have a little catch light. With that mask, we're not going to get any detail around his eyes. We're just going to get the light that hits the cornea and then where it transmits through to the iris. So the light's coming in from the upper left, so the catch light's going to be in the upper left. So there's his eyes. And now I just take that round brush, and it's clean, and I just want to then just make some hairy transitions here where my white and the black meet. Because that hair even gets a little bit brown right at the edge of the mask here. Make this transition a little bit smoother here. Just give the feeling of hair. So this is Charlie, our raccoon. Again, where that hair, the light hits the hair, I get it pretty textured, because that helps give his face some shape. Now I'm going to just bring this shadow up. His muzzle needs to be a little bit narrower there. And then this, I want to make a little, that's too bright, or too dark. I need to make this a little bit lighter here. So there's our little raccoon. There's Charlie. I really appreciate you watching my YouTube videos. Please also subscribe, where you get a notification every time I put up a new video. Also visit my blog. There I show the complete step-by-step process of this painting, as well as others I do. You'll be able to see the finished painting on my blog. The link is in the description below. It's also on the final frame of my video. So you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and just give somebody you love a big hug. Say, I love you. Thanks again. Bye-bye.